Hello everyone, how are you? How's it going? This is Owen Fitzpatrick with another episode of Changing Minds Season 2. This episode is Love on the Brain, how and why we fall in love. Now, you might ask yourself, well, why Owen? Why did you choose to do an episode about love on the 10th of February? Well, it's because there's a very special day coming up. 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day. But there's also another special day coming up. And that is the one, the only Valentine's Day. Now, I know there's some of you out there that are thinking to yourself, oh my God, I hate Valentine's Day. It was created by like a bunch of marketers who are preying on our desire for love, which is constructed by the entertainment industry. And based upon that, they make us spend lots of money because that's all it is. It's just about money. I hear where you're coming from. At the same time, it's nice to have a day where people are like, oh, love, and all that sort of jazz, I think, personally. But again, I respect you if you disagree. I will say some people that disagree, they do it like this. They say, well, the thing is, why should you just have one day? You should have more than one day. It's a disgrace just to have one day. And I know what you're saying. At the same time, I guarantee you, most of the people saying that, you don't show love every day. You say, oh, it should be done every day. Do you do it every day? Do you? Are you the same people that say, Christmas, it shouldn't be like Christmas about generosity, but you should be acting like that all the time? Do you? Do you act like that all the time? The reason I say it is because I think it's good to celebrate something like love. I agree with a little bit of the whole, you walk into a shop or store and all of a sudden they are you buying chocolates? Because if you're not buying chocolates for your significant other, then you're a terrible human being and you hate them. There is something to be said for challenging the fact that you don't want to have to buy into the narrative that says that you have to spend money and lots of money and whatever. At the same time, I think it's nice to have a day where we celebrate that kind of thing, personally. But again, if you disagree with me, I wouldn't really argue that much with you. Even if you're wrong. So anyway, what I want to talk about on this particular video is I want to talk about love, and I want to talk about it from I think the best way to understand love is from a scientific point of view. I think what is love? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me no more. Now, what is love? You might ask. Is a question that, well, we know what it is. It's a feeling. There's something spiritual. It's the most important thing, but I think it's much more fun if we put it under a scientific microscope and start to explore chemically what goes on. Because a great mentor of mine in the storytelling field, a guy called Robert McKee, he has this quote where he says, when you fall in love, you've just opened a special doorway to hell. And I love that. I absolutely love it, because the shit that goes on in our head whenever we fall for someone is intense. It's mad. Your brain just going crazy. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the chemicals of why we fall in love, and also some of the psychological theory. And then also what are the things we can do to be better at the relationships that we have. So that's what I want to kind of get to. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have more insights and understanding about love. Hopefully I won't have ruined it for you, because that would be awful to ruin it for you in that way. But I'm hoping by the end of this, you'll be going, And then when you're on the Valentine's date with your significant other, or your first date with somebody, and you're like, hi, you can pull out these little bits and pieces, and maybe, I don't know, get them to sign up and subscribe to the Changing Minds podcast, and maybe leave ratings and reviews, or I don't know, follow me on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, if you want. It's up to you. But I think it would benefit them, and I think it would benefit your overall relationship if you were to do that. So why do we fall in love? Why do birds suddenly appear every time that person draws near? Well, a lot of it comes down to the chemical cocktails that are happening inside of your brain. So there's a number of chemicals we'll talk about. We're going to talk about serotonin. We're going to talk about dopamine. We're going to talk about oxytocin. We're going to talk about a chemical called phenethylamine. At a very simple level, they're the main chemicals involved. So what is serotonin? Serotonin is a chemical, mainly a happy chemical, mainly associated with safety and security and contentment and everything is good and feeling a sense of well-being about your life. Dopamine is the high and the low, that yay, no, that you experience as you go through anything in life, but definitely relationships. When you get that text from the person and you're like feeling good, but then you don't get a response. You're like, my life is over. It's pointless. Why am I even doing this? And that's not so good. So you've got the good and the bad with dopamine, and that can affect your serotonin levels. So if your dopamine levels are going like crazy, your serotonin level struggles as well. Then we have the phenethylamine, which is like trace amounts are in chocolate, but that makes you feel like elated when you're with a loved one. And then there's oxytocin, which is like the cuddle chemical. Whenever you make love to somebody, or whenever you kiss someone or hug someone, whenever you're building friendship with someone or create intimacy with someone, that tends to be a chemical that you've become full of, and it bonds you to another person, makes you trust them, etc., etc. So all of those chemicals are sort of in cahoots with each other. But really, the thing to understand about falling in love in particular is that there was a great book I read a few years ago by a guy called Frank Tallis. It was called Lovesick, and it was love as a mental illness. Now, I know what you're going to say. Love is not a mental illness, Owen. Love is beautiful. Love is this. Love is that. Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'm with you. But at the same time, it's a complete mental illness. Like, if you look at brain scans of people as they're falling in love, when they're infatuated, the early phase of love, and you get them thinking about the person that they're in love with, and then you look at people who have OCD, you'll see there's a very, very similar brain images you'll get. You'll see with regards to people that struggle with, like, that's obsessive compulsive disorder. With people addicted to cocaine, once again, there's a lot of similarities between people addicted to strong drugs and people when they're falling in love. So your brain has literally gone mad whenever you're falling in love with somebody. That's what's happening. And therefore, a lot of times we don't tend to go with reason very well. So it's another thing. If you feel like doing something, the way people give you advice, just do what you feel. Don't fucking even think about doing what you feel. Because most of the time when you're feeling those elation feelings or devastation feelings, that kind of feeling is not it's not your gut. It's not your intuition. It's not even your really instinct. It's just chemicals that are pummeling through your system, affecting you. Similar that, you generally don't make good decisions when you're drunk, or you don't make good decisions when you're high a lot of times. I suppose it depends on the situation, but the majority of times when you're under the influence, let's say, of course, you're not necessarily going to make the smartest decisions in those different things. So you've just got to be aware of that. Now, there's other chemicals involved. There's pheromones. Whenever we smell pheromones from another person, we do it unconsciously. We're attracted to some people more than others. There's a fascinating study about women going through, going through ovulation. So this is a great one. So they noticed, what they did was they gave women t-shirts, sweaty t-shirts of guys, and they had to sniff them. And they noticed that women, when they were going through ovulation, women tended to be more attracted to more masculine men. So guys like me. Whereas when they sniffed, let's say, and they weren't going through ovulation, they're more likely to be attracted to guys who were, I suppose, not so masculine, sort of safer bets, not as strong and dangerous as the masculine men. And again, masculine, you're talking about testosterone. I don't know the exact formula in terms of how they worked it out, but they noticed that was a natural reaction, significant reaction that they had in that context. And if you think about what that means, it means there's an awful lot of chemistry going on. And that's why when we talk about, I'm not sure we had chemistry, there's an awful lot of things that are happening that we can't put our finger on. Because once again, you could be the perfect person, you could have all the right qualities, but yet the person doesn't find you attractive. And it really is an individual thing. And we're attracted, we don't have as much control as we think over who we're attracted to. Now that brings us into a little bit of psychology, which is where we talk about attachment theory. And a guy called John Bowlby and lots of other great researchers back in the day looked and formulated this idea that our attachments when we're much younger can have an impact upon how we attach ourselves to other people later in life. And so, for example, there's a sort of three different styles of attachment they talk about. There's the secure attachment, the anxious attachment, and the avoidant attachment. And the secure style might be about 50% or so, then 25 each for the other two. But basically, someone who's a secure attachment style doesn't really get worked up about things too much, and they kind of take things easy, and they're pretty healthy in their outlook and way of thinking. But then you've got the avoidant, and they're people who tends to be very sort of like, they don't let you in very much, and they don't really like too much affection or too much in the relationship. They kind of keep everything at an arm's length. And then you people in the anxious phase, which are like constantly petrified you're going to leave them. And I'm exaggerating here, but the deal is, if you've, let's say, two avoidant people that are dating, sometimes that won't work out because neither of them put in much of the effort, or they're both distant from each other. If you've two people that are anxious, then sometimes that can be like super intense, and they're the time where you go, oh my God, they're just sickly in love because they're like, they need each other, they're needy with each other. But then if you get two secure people, they're the people you hate because they're perfect, because they're like, they look too happy. And you're like, whatever. So there's all that sort of jazz that you have to look out for. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you're not going to go, anxious at the beginning of a relationship. As I said, when the chemical cocktails, I mean, when you send off that, let's say, for example, you've got a couple of dates and you're falling for someone, and then you send off that text and you're really falling for them. Your brain is like it's gone fucking mad. Because in your brain, all of these chemicals are thrown you into a disarray. You can't think logically. You can't stop thinking about them. It's literally, it is a drug. But once you get to the point where you get into that relationship, then that doesn't have to be as difficult as it is. So sometimes we can be anxious, but that doesn't mean that that's our style. Sometimes our style might be secure when we're in the relationship. And that brings me to a guy called Sternberg, who had a sort of a model or a theory of love. And he said that love is really made up of three different components, which I think is probably one of the most useful of all the theories of love out there. And the three components are passion, intimacy, and commitment. And he said that you need all three if you're to have like a successful, happy, long-term relationship. And so passion is the early phase. It's the dopamine highs. It's the phenethylamine. It's the, oh my God, I can't wait to see this person, being drawn to them, being attracted to them, wanting them, all that sort of jazz. Then you have the second, which is the intimacy, and that's building friendships with someone where you become really close to them because they're like friends with you. But then the third one is commitment, and that is when your lifestyles work, so the two of you fit together in that way. And so he says that, obviously you need the passion to have that attraction to each other, but you also need the intimacy so that you can build a good emotional relationship with each other. And then you also need the commitment. In other words, your lives need to be compatible with each other, right? And if one of the three things aren't there, then you'll struggle, It's fine being in love with somebody that lives on the other side of the country, but if neither of your circumstances are going to change, then, there's no commitment there. If similarly too, if you meet a person and they're, they live right next to you and everything's perfect, but you don't feel that draw, you don't feel that love, then that's problematic. If you do feel the love and you have the commitment, but you don't have the friendship, then once again, over time, that's not going to be fulfilling enough, because a partner needs to be more than just, someone that you enjoy or have fun with or whatnot. So all three factors need to be there. And so the challenge is that when we do fall in love, our brains give us a lot of the passion, but then when it gets to committing to them, once again, the passion might not be as strong after a certain period of time. And that's when we need to reignite the passion in a relationship, and vice versa. When we have the passion at the beginning phases, we also need to take steps towards, building some sort of way of making something work with it. So establishing a sort of commitment with them. So I hope that's, kind of giving you a good insight in terms of the how and the why love works and how it happens and stuff. And the real, I suppose the next question then we have to ask ourselves is, well, what are the things we can do to improve relationships? And obviously the first guy to talk about is the work of John Gottman. And Gottman's ideas, again, he's lots of them. One of them, for example, is the 5-to-1 ratio, which basically means for every negative comment, you should say 5 positive comments to the other person that you're in a relationship with. Now, I think, like, I come from Ireland, and in Ireland, you know, we don't like the whole compliment stuff. So saying something too positive or like, you know, freaks the other person out. So instead, what we might do is 5 things that make people feel good versus 1 thing that made them feel bad. That's a better way of looking at it. Still the same ratio, but it's not necessarily just about compliments. It's about making them feel good. And that might be teasing them, but in an affectionate way or in a funny way. Making them feel good about themselves in 5 ways as opposed to, you know, for every 1 negative thing. Another thing that Gottman talks about is the importance of, when you're fighting with someone, it's okay to argue, but try to avoid criticizing. So instead, complain about their behavior instead of criticizing who they are, their identity. That's another important thing. And then another thing that he sort of suggests is have repair attempts. So whenever you're going through an argument, have certain things that you and your partner do to actively figure things out, either to figure them out, to go for a walk, a break if both of you need a break, or to, I don't know, to have a joke, a running joke, or to talk about it, to have solution, to have some practice that you engage in that helps you to figure things out when you're having arguments, so that, you know, you can find a way through. And again, there's some really, really good stuff in Gottman's work. I've another podcast in season 1 you can check out on that, I think. The work of John Gottman, literally, is there. Then we also have some other insights from a guy called Gary Chapman, who has the 5 languages of love. And on it, Gary talks about the fact that we all have different ways to feel loved. So some people feel loved because you spend time with them. Some people feel loved because you say things, the words that you use. I love you. You know, and the Italians love that. It's like, io ti amo, io ti adoro, mi manchi molto. I miss you a lot. So this, I love you, I adore you. I miss you a lot. Non posso smettere di pensare a te. I cannot stop thinking about you. I don't know, the accent's a bit dodgy, right? And the pronunciation's probably off the charts bad. But you get what I'm saying. So the Italians are great with the all words in that way. But again, it could be time. I'm spending time with them. It could be words. It could be, I don't know, an act of service. That would mean, you know, you do something for them. You clean the room. You get them groceries. I don't know, clean the fridge, whatever. A lot of cleaning done. But again, it's showing that you love them. Some people feel more loved when you do something for them. Other people, it is gifts. So you buy them roses or chocolates or, you know, a new iPhone or something, and that makes them feel good. And then lastly, this touch, right? So, you know, you touch them. You show physical affection. You know, maybe you give them a hug, or you give them a kiss, or you stroke their hair, or you touch them on the cheek. Whatever it is, I don't know, whatever you're into. But again, some people like that. The problem is we might have habits of how we show love that are very different than the habits that other people like to receive love in, and vice versa. So if you can figure out the language of love of your significant other, and they can figure out the language of love of you, and the two of you can, you know, combine forces, then wow, what kind of relationship could you potentially have? But again, you never know, because, you know, love is so mystical. You never know what's going to happen. You know, good things happen, bad things happen. People fall in love, people fall out of love. And by the way, people are just as crazy when they fall out of love than they are when they fall in love. And that's why they're not thinking straight. Therefore, anything a person says when they're like breaking up with you or having a fight with you, it's probably not true. It's just they're like fucking mad. Just like they were when they fell in love with you in the first place. It's not an accurate portrayal of you. I think when you truly fall in love with someone, and that lasts over time, you don't fall in love with information about them, or you don't fall in love just because of these chemicals. You fall in love because of the way in which they tell their story. And so the message for you then, I suppose, on this wonderful Valentine's week is, regardless of Valentine's Day, whether you're single, whether you're in a relationship, what I'd love you to do is to understand that the most important thing is to start to work on yourself and love your life, and go out there, and if you are single, then when you meet people, just try to be aware of what's going on in your brain. Be aware of not allowing that to negatively impact you in some way to the point where you make the wrong kind of decision. And if you're in a relationship with someone, again, don't allow any sort of interactions or argument with them to negatively impact you also, as well as that. Because the reality is that sometimes falling in love can feel like, you know, we're sick and we need an ambulance. See what I'm saying? And what's really important is that in order to make us feel better, we need to recognize that there's nothing wrong with us. It's just what's going on in our brain. And when you recognize and realize that, it can make life an awful lot easier, because love is on the brain and we do tend to feel and wrap ourselves up in this feeling. But the truth of the matter is that the real love that matters is the love that we have for our significant other. That is not just about because they're our significant other, it's because of who they are. It's the love we have for our children, the love we have for our parents, the love we have for our friends, the love we have for our dogs, our, you know, the pets that we have. And because we have that love, that's what makes life worthwhile. And on that fucking beautiful note, I want to say a big thank you to all of you out there who have seen and who have heard this particular episode. Hope you found it useful. I wish you a very happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're spending it either with yourself or with someone you love, or with your friends, or you're binge watching some sort of TV show. But whatever it is, I hope you have a great day on the 14th of February. For now, hope for those of you watching the video, hope the background wasn't too distracting. That's a particular calendar of one part of the stuff that I do. So if you're like, there's a lot of white space there, trust me, there's an awful lot going on in the white space. A little bit like my brain. But anyway, hope you found this useful. And if you're driving, please drive safely and carefully. And you definitely shouldn't be watching this on video if you're driving. Anyway, have a good one. Thanks very much for watching. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.